Today we have a very special guest. We have John Smoltz, former pitcher for the Atlanta Braves, joining us today. Smoltz is an 8-time All-Star who helped Atlanta to a championship in the 1995 World Series. He's also the 1996 Cy Young Award winner after posting a record of 24-8. In 2015, he was inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and since retirement, he has served as a color commentator and analyst for MLB Network, TBS, and Fox Sports. So thank you for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm just glad I had my college girls to be able to teach me how to do this.
We're going to start this conversation by talking about your golf game. How do you go from playing for fun to eventually semi-pro and qualifying for the 2018 U.S. Senior Open?
Well, you know what? I never played golf growing up as a kid, and when I got into baseball, I had a lot of time on my hands because starting pitchers pitch once every 5 days. So you got 4 days in between where you're really not competing on the field. And so it started at the age, 21, 20 years old. I started picking up the game, and I started playing golf in between my starts. You know, a lot of time to kill on the minor leagues when you're by yourself. So I picked up golf and fishing, fell in love with both. But golf was just something that I realized I could do for a long time. And I'm a self-taught baseball player. I'm a self-taught golfer. Never really had lessons. I've had tips along the way and played with some great players. But my competitiveness is one that always drives me to be the very best I can be. And so I've just kind of self-taught my way into a place where qualifying for the U.S. Senior Open was the greatest accomplishment of my life to date, including all the things I've done in baseball. And playing competitively in golf tournaments on the Champions Tour is an absolute blast, even though I know I'm not quite at the level that they are. But I've learned a lot about my game. I'm not afraid to fail. And by failing, I've actually become a better golfer and learned more about myself.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, we see so many elite athletes like to play golf in their free time. And I read in a previous article that no matter what happened on the mound the day before, you were going to play golf. How do you find that as a space to just clear your mind and be at ease after a game?
Yeah, the greatest thing for me was to get away from the game that I played professionally because it can eat you up. It can consume you because we're based on our stats and wins and losses. So golf was a way to get away from thinking about baseball, and it was my chance to get out to nature and just no one's running out to the course to get my autograph. No one's trying to help me play. It's just me and the golf course and Mother Nature, whatever that brings that day. And I always felt like it was a peaceful scenario to just get away, and you're really competing against yourself. I mean, there might be 3 other people in the group, but you're really competing against the anxiety of yourself and shots that you know make you nervous. And par is 72. So I always wanted to break par. I always felt like every day that I played golf, that one day, there was a chance I could shoot my best number, my best score. And it's just something that's always motivated me to be my best self, best version of myself on that given day. And it was the thing that kept me going in baseball. Myself, Tom Glavine, Greg Maddux, everyone who pitched on our staff, we all said that golf added about 3 to 5 years of our big league career because it kept us fresh and didn't allow the game to burn us out.
That being said, what is the best golf score you've ever hit?
Well, to date, it's about, 15 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, I shot a 63 at the Floridian, and that's in Florida. And I thought I was going to shoot my best score 2 days ago. I was 8 under with 4 holes to go, and I didn't get it done. But that's the quest. I have these goals in life, whether it was when I was playing baseball, I had set goals all the time. But my goal is to see how long I can play golf. But I want to start shooting my age at about age 66. So I'm 13 years away from 66. And every year I get older, I want to be able to shoot that score. And I figure if I'm 90 and playing golf and can shoot 90, I'm doing pretty good.
That's a great way to think about it, for sure.
You mentioned Maddux and Glavine. Speaking of those guys, you, Greg, and Tom, that was like one of the greatest Braves teams of all time. What were your emotions like during that run, just enjoying the thrill of it all?
Well, the three of us getting a chance to pitch together for 10 years, we never really talked about accomplishing things together as much as we were enjoying the run. But every year, everybody had predicted we couldn't continue to do what we were doing. So we really looked at it as a challenge every year to be the best we can be. And it was the greatest time of our lives. We played golf together. We had a great time being teammates. And more importantly, each guy was really darn good when they went out to the mound. So you had a front row seat to something spectacular possibly every night. And I didn't pitch at all like them. They were a totally different pitchers, but we learned from each other and grew from each other. And I'm telling you, we never dreamt it would last that long, but we really did. As we reminisce about how those times were like, we just had a blast.
Right, that's great. And you also told the coaches that you're going to end Greg's run and win the Cy Young Award, which ended up happening. You had so many accolades that season. What do you think mentally prepared you the most to endure the longevity of that season?
Yeah, I never really spoke like that before. I was kind of half jokingly, but I felt that my first year of not having to deal with an injury or a surgery, I was coming off a surgery in 95, and I had the season that I finished, and the 96 off season was fantastic for me. I felt physically great. And I remember walking into the coach's room and literally saying that. I said, hey, I'm going to let you guys know this is Greg had a nice run, but it's my turn. I'm going to win the Cy Young this year. And I kind of chuckled and left the locker room. But that whole season I had believed I was going to be a different person and a different pitcher. And from the very beginning, I remember telling the reporters, and I said something like this. I said, you know what? You're going to see a different person this year, whether I win my first or win my next. Whether I lose my first and win the next 14, you won't know the difference. And that's exactly what happened. I lost my first game that year and won the next 14 in a row. And I was 14-1. And obviously that's when everybody said it was mine to lose instead of mine to win. So that whole year taught me a lot about my faith, taught me a lot about my physical body, that I could finally put it all together. And I didn't have to deal with any aches and pains. And it was really a dream season. The only downer was we came within a couple games of beating the New York Yankees to win our back-to-back World Series championship, which we didn't do after winning the first two games.
Right. And speaking of your faith, you're very involved in the community. And one of your roles included co-founding Kingsridge Christian School in Alpharetta, Georgia, where I attended as well. How did that come about?
That's the craziest story of all time. I really believe God put it on my heart, but I had no business being part of that I wasn't equipped to do anything remotely possible to building the school. And I had the passion and I had the ability to financially give. But I believe one day I was just riding down the road or even on my lawnmower, and I just felt like maybe the experience I had in a previous Christian school board that I was on, maybe it would be great if we started one over in our area. And I just went on this passionate quest of seeing who was with me, who wanted to help, what kind of board could I find. But I really believe God pressed it upon my heart to do it. I wouldn't know any other reason. There was no way as a Major League Baseball player in the middle of my career could I think I could multitask and do something quite to this scale. And the story is incredible. You already mentioned you went there. My daughters went there. My son went there. It is something I'm the most proud of that I really had a very small part in. My name gets thrown out. I did help start it, and all those things are true. But this school will go well beyond my lifetime and well beyond my kids and their kids and so on and so forth. So I wanted to make an impact in the community. I wanted the community to be better for having this school there. And I think so far it has really been a joy to watch it grow.
Yes, and we're thankful for it.
We kind of spoke about some of the teammates that you had in that bullpen. Another really awesome teammate that you had was Deion Sanders. Could you tell us a little bit about Deion and what it was like playing with him?
Yeah, Deion Sanders to this day is the greatest athlete I've ever been around. I had a blast with Deion Sanders. We did so many things together, and we had games and competition, and he loves to fish. I mean, Deion is known for if there's water and it's in a bathtub, he's going to be fishing. It doesn't matter. He's definitely loves fishing, but the rawest, most gifted athlete I've ever been around. He brought a dimension to our team that was so unique. I only wish it could have lasted longer. I mean, what he was doing was phenomenal, and it wasn't a distraction at all to us. It was something that, you know, along with Bo Jackson, I don't know that we'll ever see again. And I think Deion could have been the greatest leadoff hitter to ever play the game if he quit football. And, of course, he was the greatest defensive back that ever played the game. So he had a chance to be the greatest at both sports. That's a rarity.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. I think the media a lot of times makes it out with like the whole Deion's double play, 30 for 30 that came out, that it was so negative to be playing two sports, when rather it's such a feat to accomplish that should really be celebrated more.
Yeah, I thought it was well depicted on how there was some false, you know, it wasn't as accurate back then as what people were making it. And our team had no issue whatsoever with Deion Sanders trying to pull this off. Zero. Management might have been a little different, but Deion was the kind of guy, I mean, he played through a lot of injuries in the middle of that, and people are always going to have their opinions on what someone should or shouldn't do until they walk in their own shoes. You have no idea what he was actually pulling off. And had we won in 1992, he would have been the MVP of the World Series. That's how big of an impact he had without being a full-time player.
Yeah, and that's, like you said, that's incredible to think of with, you know, like you said, best defensive back to play the game and had the potential to be the greatest leadoff hitter ever.
Yep.
Truly amazing.
He did lose to me one-on-one in basketball and had to stand on the picnic table in the locker room, though, and proclaim that I was the better basketball player than him.
Now, that is a clip I think I'll remember that the rest of my life. So awesome. Could you tell us a little bit about what you notice in a lot of young pitchers today compared to back in your day of play? And does having a pitch count help?
No, the pitch count is one of those arbitrary numbers that means absolutely nothing, that has taken on meaning more than it should. When it was established way back in the Stone Ages when I pitched, it was a number to create an opportunity for a pitcher to be more effectively concise with his pitches, not a barometer or a gauge for whether or not there was injuries that were going to take place. So that kind of has always been overblown. But the pitchers today have a different reward system than what we did. We were being asked to go through the lineup and pitch in a complete game form and pitch against the lineup 4 times through. We were taught differently. We were prepared differently. And so therefore you pitch according to the times that you're in. Today, that's not what's being asked. Analytics is a big part of that, and certain statistics that take over. So guys are training to be bigger, stronger, faster, and throw as hard as they can for as long as they can. The next guy up is basically the mantra. So we've overdeveloped, I think, the young pitcher into a phenomenal arm, but he's really been given the opportunity to be a complete pitcher because he's only being told to do something that basically the clubs want, and that's give me the best stuff you have every single time, no matter what, if you face the guy once, twice, or if you're lucky enough to face him 3 times. So it really is a different era, and it's hard to compare the two. But I can tell you that the injury rate has gone way up since this era has started. And since the youth baseball has been an abuse to the young player and his arm and basically his career, we're dealing with these injuries at such a rate that nobody blinks an eye anymore. I'm very disappointed that we can continue to have these great athletes not extend their careers well beyond what they should because injuries are taking over.
So like we just said, so injuries are a huge part of the game. How important is it for guys in low league all the way up to the collegiate level to take care of your bodies?
Well, it's essential because the biggest thing is if I told you you had the opportunity in a window to play for 10, 15, 20 years, I think most people would say, give me 20. But I think what's happening is we're fast-tracking the young kid in the sport today, girl or boy, to make a decision at 8, 9, 10-year-old what sport you want to play and then play it all year and become the best version you can. That is such a flawed philosophy, and it's a burnout philosophy, and it's an injury philosophy. And I think that's the problem I see at youth baseball, youth sports, any kind of sport. They're asking these clubs to fight for the athlete, to get control over them for the whole year, and then produce these, super freaks. It just doesn't work that way. And the parents are buying in because they think this is the system that's out there for their child to become the best chances to go to college, for scholarships or for draft dollars, for the big leagues. And I think that is going to eventually burn out, because what we'll see is, as great as these athletes are and as much and as big and as strong as they are, what value do they have if they're not reaching their potential and can't play? That to me is a big, sad area that we have not dealt with as a sport. Because so many more are coming, I think that's why we're not paying attention to the injury rate and the injuries that are actually happening.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about pitchers not being the full version of themselves, the best pitcher they could be. Who are some pitchers currently playing that you see as full pitchers that have developed into that jack of all trades?
Yeah, well, first of all, every young pitcher should look at what Justin Verlander has done in his career. He's maintained his velocity. He's maintained his body. He's not a bodybuilder. He's lean, athletic, and he's been able to do his craft for a long time. Jacob deGrom is following right in those footsteps. Clayton Kershaw is definitely one of those guys that mastered his craft. But I think when you evolve, your ability to get better and adapt to the times was what makes you special. And just because you can throw the ball 100 miles an hour doesn't mean that you're going to be able to sustain that over time. So I think the fact that these young arms that are so great, when you see a complete pitcher, I mean, Scherzer, Strasburg, deGrom, and even Buehler now out in LA, there are so many young pitchers that have the potential to be great. Now the goal is to stay healthy.
So, John, you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, and that's always going to be a part of your legacy. Could you walk us through your emotions when you found out and what you were doing leading up to the day that you had to give your speech?
Yeah, it's crazy. The way it went down is, you don't basically know unless you get a phone call. And if you don't get the phone call, then you wait another year. And I really wasn't in the boat or the camp where I'm going to make it first time. I've never allowed myself to think that way. So I literally had this game plan. It's going to sound crazy, but this is who I am, and this is what I was ready to do. I had my bags packed. I didn't even have my bags packed. They told me to pack my bags, but I said, I'm not going down that road. I'll wait for the call and then pack really quick. I was either going to go down to the stadium for a press conference and then head to New York that night, or I was going to play in my men's league basketball game, and I was ready to do either one. And the phone call came, luckily for me, and basically they give you 6 months to prepare for your speech, and even that might not be long enough. When you think about encompassing your whole career and trying to get it down to 20 minutes and below is impossible. But for the most part, I worked on my speech trying to deliver the best version that I could to for the moment that I had to make the most impact. And until you get up in front of 35, 40,000 people, you have no idea what you're going to feel and what your body's going to go through. And I'm telling you, it was one of the most incredible feelings in the world to have your family in the front row and then 40,000 people behind them. And it really wasn't the pressure of the 40,000 people in front. It was the Hall of Famers that were sitting behind me that made me feel like I can't believe I'm part of the greatest fraternity of baseball players in history. And I still to this day don't truly understand it. It's never been a quest of mine. It's never been from an 8-year-old on up. That's all I thought about. I didn't even thought about it when I was playing. I think the Hall of Fame is something that happens. If you're playing for the Hall of Fame, I bet percentage-wise, most of those people don't make it. And it's because we're playing the game to be the best version of ourselves and every day be the best teammate we can be, I think allows you to reach those kind of levels that ultimately will end up in the voters' hands on whether or not you're viewed as one of the best or not.
Awesome. So many athletes today tend to transition into an analyst or commentator role, some even before they've retired, like Drew Brees, after the conclusion of their careers. So you've had the opportunity to do that, and it looks so natural while you're doing it. How do you view the game up in the booth as opposed to on the mound?
Yeah, it's really different. I mean, the mound, basically, you're in the heat of the battle, and you're only caring about one thing, the hitter and the catcher. That's it. You don't have to worry about 15 other guys. Mm-hmm. You only have to know 9 guys when you're on the mound. When you're on the bench, you have time to look at the game in a different way. Because the starting pitcher, like I said, I had 4 other days that I was watching the game and watching it intently with strategy ideas, with how the pitcher's doing, the batter-hitter combination. When you're in the booth, you're seeing something in a little bit more interesting fashion. You have to know all 50 players. You don't have to just know the lineups. You have to know all 50 players. So the work that goes behind the scenes is way more than I ever thought. And the game that I see from the booth is in a way where it's actually a little slower than if you're playing in the game, because things happen faster in the heat of competition. And I've actually transitioned learning the different style of the game today that I did not even remotely play when I was. So I have to adjust on the fly and learn how to articulate that and explain it in a way that the viewer at home has a better understanding of the broadcast, having watched it, than having not.
Awesome. So you talk about that one-on-one matchup on the mound. Juliet had an awesome question. Who is the toughest batter that you've ever had to face?
Toughest batter, hands down, is Tony Gwynn. He owned me. Matter of fact, we'd have a saying in the game when a batter used to own a pitcher, one of my teammates would basically say something like this: "Hey, Tony Gwynn wants to know if he's sending a limo for you to make sure you get to the ballpark so you can pitch tonight." That kind of banter. But Tony Gwynn was one of the greatest hitters of all time. He left us way too soon. And I didn't have any way of getting him out. I mean, we're talking a huge sample size. We're not talking 4 for 10. We're talking 40, 38 for something. He hit 444 off of me. And the greatest stat that I can give you, based on the three of us pitching, Maddox, Glavine, and myself, have struck out, I think, over 9,000 batters collectively. We faced Tony Gwynn at least 100 and some or 200 and some times collectively. Had to be. Pretty close. Whatever the number is, we struck him out collectively 4 times. That's it. And I got him once. And I don't think Maddox struck him out at all. It's either 3 or 4 times that we struck out Tony Gwynn collectively in our careers. To put that in perspective in today's game doesn't even make sense.
That's just mind-blowing, that stat right there. Wow. 4 times. That's
4
crazy.
times. And there were times in his whole year that he struck out less than 15 times on the year, I believe. There's some crazy numbers that Tony Gwynn has put up. And the ultimate respect that I can give him is that I actually threw him a knuckleball. And he laughed at the plate, because that's the sign of me tipping my hat going, I got nothing else to get you out. Try this.
That's incredible. That's really awesome.
Most of us in here are aspiring broadcasters. So what advice do you have for us as we pursue our careers?
I think the biggest thing that I would say is that, studying the game, you don't have to have played the game to be a broadcaster. But if you haven't played the game, then I think you have to do a little more work studying the game and the nuances and understanding the game or the sport that you're trying to become a broadcaster. But being engaging, not being afraid to laugh or make fun of yourself or make mistakes. That's the number one thing that most broadcasters, in my opinion, who try to transition from athlete to broadcaster are afraid to make a mistake, afraid to step out and make certain statements without knowing, hey, you learn from it. And I think the biggest thing is your style and your personality should come across naturally, and it shouldn't have to be forced. There's a flow to it. There's a flow you learn, but nobody just comes onto the scene and becomes the best. They have to learn the cadence between you and your partner, and if you're doing it with somebody else. But I think always being prepared is the number one thing I would always say. I always feel like I'm prepared. I never wing it, because if you wing it, eventually it's going to expose you, and eventually that's going to be a mark against what you're trying to do. So I'm not afraid to laugh at myself. I'm not afraid to make fun of myself, and I'm certainly not afraid to make a mistake.
That's great advice. Well, that's all for us. Thank you so much for your time today and being here. It was great talking to you.
Thanks for having me, and best of luck in your future shows. I think it's great what you guys are doing.
Thank you.